Our next storyteller is Jo Barto. Jo is a retired elementary school teacher and says she's been telling stories for years to little people, so she decided to start telling stories to big people. This is her second story with the SPARK Storyteller. She was last seen on stage in the fall. Hilarious stage-left production of Senior Moments. Fun fact about Jo is that when she was young, she wanted to be a cowboy. Then she wanted to be an interior designer. Kind of related, right? And so she decided to become a teacher. She finds memorizing what you wrote to be the biggest and strangest challenge. The title of her story tonight is Surprise. Please welcome Jo Barto.
This story takes place in 1983, before HIPAA became law. The summer of 1983 was very, very hot and humid, and we had no air conditioning. I had noticed that my legs were starting to swell up, and when I pushed on my calf, there was an indentation left behind. My ankles were starting to swell over the tops of my shoes. I was falling asleep at dinner. I was 6 months pregnant. I called the doctor to see if there was something I should be doing about all this, and I was told to lay off the salt and elevate my feet. So I laid on the couch with ice packs around my ankles. It didn't really do much. It so happened that I had a doctor's appointment that week, and when I went in, they took my blood pressure 3 times because the readings were so high. When the doctor came in, he used the word preeclampsia and the word stroke. From there, I was sent to Salem Hospital for 3 days of bed rest. At the end of 3 days, there was no change. We were ordered to go to Akron City Hospital, to go right to the ER that they were expecting us. But I was 26. I was naive. I was pregnant, and I was hungry. So we stopped for lunch. When we got to the hospital, I was admitted and I was taken into a room. The lights were dimmed, and I did my best to try and slow my breathing and slow my thoughts. Medication was given to me, and they said, we'll come back in an hour. At the end of that hour, they wheeled in an ultrasound machine, and it was found that our baby was 26 weeks gestation. The doctor said, we have no choice. An emergency C-section will take place today so that you don't have a stroke and to give your baby the best chance of survival. A landline was brought in, and we called our parents that were 2 hours away. Now, this was not how I expected a pregnancy to go. We had not had a baby shower. There was no nursery. This was not like what you see on TV, all the little happy endings. We hadn't even gone to Lamaze class yet. In the operating room, it was very, very quiet. There was no sound of the baby's cry. Our daughter, Casey, was born at 2 pounds, 1 ounce. And she was immediately intubated and given medication so that her lungs would become more pliable. I was in recovery for 24 hours. When I got to my room, I had a roommate. She had had a son whose name was Nicholas George. Yes, I still remember that all these years later. And she was on the phone all day telling everyone how wonderful her baby was. I had a Polaroid picture, the hushed tones of doctors and nurses, and friends and family who wouldn't or couldn't admit that our baby had been born. My husband spent the week going between 2 hospitals, Akron City, Akron Children's, hoping that he would be in the right place at the right time whenever one of us would need him. I spent the entire day after I went back, got into my room crying. I went through an entire box of Kleenex, and finally I was given a private room. It took a week for my blood pressure to come down. When I was discharged, I had a teddy bear and an It's a Girl balloon, and that's it. We drove to the NICU on the way home to Lisbon. Now, back in 1983, there was a very popular movie called E.T. Anybody remember that one? That's what my baby looked like. She looked like E.T. Her color was off. She was very wrinkly. She had no fat whatsoever. My husband took his wedding ring off and slid it all the way up to her bicep. But her fingernails and her eyelashes were just a marvel to see. Thus began 11 anxious weeks of calling every day, sometimes several times a day, to see if her oxygen level needs had come down, to see if she had tolerated a feed. When the hospital called the first time and said, well, she's had a brain bleed, and the next time the phone rang, it was she needs a transfusion. Then after that is, oh, she's had a collapsed lung, we need to put in a chest tube. Every time the phone rang, I was anxious. We hung a pair of red boxing gloves near her isolette, hoping that she would continue to fight. Now, back in 1983, there was no skin-to-skin contact. There was nothing like that. It was 4 weeks before I could even hold my baby. And at that, I got 2 minutes, and my husband got 2 minutes. To say that bonding pretty much was not existent between us would be true. It's very hard to bond with your baby when you only see your baby maybe once, 1 hour a day, if that. I had PTSD and I had postpartum. I was not the energetic new 26-year-old mother that I had envisioned myself to be. Think Mary Tyler Moore, only with a baby. My faith was shaken greatly. I was very angry at God. I couldn't get through the Our Father, especially the line that says, "Thy will be done." Every time the phone rang, it was, what's going to happen next? Through those 11 weeks at the NICU, we got to know many families and many babies. We went in one day, and the NICU was set up as a very large room. There was intensive care, intermediate care, and then a step down. Casey was still in intensive care when we went in one day, and her name, they put the baby's names on a board, and they would slide them. Her name was missing off the board, and her isolette wasn't in its usual place. So when we walked in, we were rather shocked, and a kind nurse came over and said, "It's okay, she's being moved up to intermediate care." Exhale. There were times when some of the babies' names would disappear, and we would ask the nurse, what happened to the baby? And they would just shake their heads. Casey is now 42 years old. She is a mom. She has 2 daughters. And coming full circle, she works at Akron Children's Hospital, the place where she started her life, for the first 11 weeks of her life. She works in the public relations department, writing stories about kids and babies who are there for care. And I am a Gigi, a role that I embrace 150%, because through Eleanor and through Charlotte, I got to do some of those things that I didn't get to do with my child. I got to feed them, I got to rock them, and I got to feel what it's like when they fall asleep on your chest.
Thank you, Joe.